A young banker is sentenced to life in prison for the murder of his wife and her lover, even though he insists he's innocent. That man is Andy. In 1947, Andy stands trial as prosecutors present strong evidence against him. Earlier, he had discovered his wife's affair and followed her to her lover's house one night. Drunk, heartbroken, and holding a revolver, Andy seriously considered killing them both. But before anything happened, he changed his mind, drove away, and threw the gun into a river. Despite denying the crime, Andy is convicted and sent to Shawshank State Penitentiary. Inside the brutal prison walls, he slowly adapts and builds a life for himself with intelligence and patience. However, some dangerous people inside the prison are determined to destroy that peace. Realizing he may never survive if he stays trapped there forever, Andy begins planning something almost impossible, a way to escape Shawshank itself. Even though Andy never killed his wife, the next morning both she and her lover are found dead in the apartment, shot multiple times. Since Andy had threatened them earlier and owned a revolver, all suspicion immediately falls on him. During the trial, he repeatedly denies committing the murders, but the prosecution tears apart every explanation he gives. The court ultimately believes he is lying and sentences him to 2 consecutive life terms. He is then transferred to Shawshank. Inside Shawshank, Andy meets Ellis Boyd Red Redding, known as Red, a longtime inmate serving a life sentence for his own crimes. Red has applied for parole several times, claiming he's changed, but every request has been denied. Over the years, he has built connections inside the prison and quietly runs a black market business, supplying inmates with cigarettes, posters, and other contraband from outside. Unlike the terrified new prisoners arriving at Shawshank, Red has fully adapted to prison life. But when Andy first enters the prison gates, he looks completely broken, like he could break down crying at any moment. The older inmates, including Red, even place bets on which new prisoner will crack first during the night. Before being taken to their cells, the new inmates are introduced to Warden Samuel. Samuel presents himself as a deeply religious man and tells them that God and discipline are the most important rules inside Shawshank. Every prisoner is handed a Bible, while the rest of the prison's rules, according to him, will be learned the hard way. The inmates are then introduced to Captain Byron, the head guard of the prison. Byron is known for his violent temper and brutal treatment of prisoners. Even the smallest mistake can earn someone a savage beating. That very first night proves how terrifying Shawshank really is. After lights out, one frightened new inmate starts crying uncontrollably in his cell. The older prisoners laugh at him, but Byron storms in furious. When the man refuses to stop crying, Byron brutally beats him and leaves him broken on the floor. After witnessing the brutal beating on their very first night, the new inmates quickly realize how terrifying life inside Shawshank truly is. The next morning, the prisoners are lined up for count before being served breakfast. While eating the disgusting prison food, Andy discovers a worm crawling inside his meal. Just as he's about to throw it away, an elderly prison librarian named Brooks Hatlin asks for the worm and feeds it to his pet crow. During meals in the crowded dining hall, Andy notices how cold and hostile the inmates are toward each other. One prisoner named Haywood harshly shuts Andy down for asking a simple question, making it clear that Shawshank is no place for friendly conversation. From that point on, Andy mostly keeps to himself. Later, while showering, he catches the attention of Boggs Diamond, leader of a violent prison gang known for targeting weaker inmates. Andy ignores him and avoids trouble whenever possible. Weeks pass with Andy silently following prison routines, barely speaking to anyone. Eventually, during recreation time in the yard, he finally approaches Red and introduces himself. After introducing himself to Red, Andy Dufresne slowly starts building a friendship with him. Andy has heard that Red can smuggle almost anything into Shawshank, so he asks him to get a small rock hammer. Red initially assumes Andy wants a real hammer to attack someone or dig his way out of prison, but Andy explains it's only for carving small stones as a hobby. Curious, Red agrees to bring it in for $10. A few days later, the hammer reaches Andy through Red's contacts. When Red sees how tiny it is, he jokes that escaping Shawshank with that would take a lifetime. Over time, Andy and Red grow surprisingly close. But peace inside Shawshank never lasts long. Boggs Diamond, leader of a violent prison gang called the Sisters, grows furious after Andy repeatedly ignores him. One day, Boggs and his gang brutally attack Andy while he is working inside the prison. The beating is so severe that Andy ends up in the prison hospital. Even after recovering, he refuses to identify his attackers, but the gang continues targeting him anyway. For nearly 2 years, Boggs Diamond and his gang continue brutally attacking Andy Dufresne whenever they get the chance. Despite the constant abuse, Andy never reports them to the guards. Then one day, an unexpected opportunity changes everything. A group of inmates from Shawshank is selected to repair the roof of a factory building outside the prison. Excited just to breathe fresh air again, Andy, Red, and many others volunteer for the job. Under the burning sun, the prisoners work on the rooftop while guarded by armed officers. During the job, Andy overhears Captain Byron complaining about a large inheritance from his dead brother. Byron has received $35,000 but is furious because taxes will take a huge portion of it. Suddenly, Andy walks straight toward him, shocking the other inmates, who think he has lost his mind. The guards immediately point their guns at him, and Byron nearly throws him off the roof in anger. But Andy calmly explains that there's a legal way to transfer the inheritance to Byron's wife as a tax-free gift. For the first time, Byron realizes Andy might actually be useful. Although Captain Byron Hadley likes Andy Dufresne's idea, setting up the paperwork legally would normally cost a fortune in lawyer fees. Andy offers to handle everything himself using his banking experience, asking for nothing in return except a few beers for his fellow inmates. Impressed by the offer, Hadley agrees. Not long after, Andy successfully helps him secure the inheritance money, and the prisoners are rewarded with cold beers on the rooftop after work. For the first time in years, the inmates feel almost human again, enjoying a brief moment of freedom under the open sky. Even Haywood, who once treated Andy badly, starts respecting him after that day. As time passes, Andy's friendship with Red grows even stronger. Since Andy loves chess but has no chess set in prison, he begins carving his own pieces out of small stones using the rock hammer Red smuggled in for him. Later, during a movie screening inside Shawshank, Andy asks Red to bring him a poster of actress Rita Hayworth so he can hang it on the wall of his cell, alongside the names previous inmates carved into the concrete over the years, to cover the carvings on his cell wall. But shortly after leaving the prison theater one night, Andy is attacked once again by Boggs Diamond and the Sisters gang. This time, Andy fights back, which only makes the beating worse. The assault is so brutal that he spends nearly a month recovering in the prison hospital. Meanwhile, Boggs is thrown into solitary confinement for his actions. After his release, Captain Byron Hadley decides to teach him a lesson personally. Hadley beats Boggs so savagely that he is permanently crippled and eventually ends up confined to a wheelchair. From that point on, nobody inside Shawshank dares lay a hand on Andy again. Over time, Red keeps bringing Andy new posters of famous actresses for his cell. During prison labor, Red, Haywood, and the others secretly collect rocks for Andy, who uses his tiny rock hammer to carve and polish them into chess pieces. Their peaceful routine is suddenly interrupted when the warden and guards storm into Andy's cell for a surprise inspection. During the surprise inspection of Andy Dufresne's cell, the guards tear everything apart but strangely never discover the tiny rock hammer. Warden Samuel notices Andy holding a Bible and questions him about scripture instead of thoroughly searching the book itself. Satisfied with Andy's answers, the guards leave. It soon becomes clear that the inspection was only an excuse. After recognizing Andy's financial skills, the warden decides to make use of him for prison business. Andy is assigned as assistant to Brooks Hatlin in the prison library. Before long, Andy understands the real reason for the promotion when Captain Byron brings another guard to him for help setting up a financial fund for his child. Word quickly spreads through Shawshank, and soon nearly every guard comes to Andy for help with taxes, paperwork, and financial advice. Even the warden secretly relies on him to hide money and reduce taxes. Andy gradually becomes the unofficial banker of Shawshank, trusted by both guards and inmates alike. Meanwhile, Red is also assigned to help in the library, and together they enjoy one of the few peaceful periods of prison life, while Andy works to improve the library with new books and supplies. When Andy Dufresne asks Warden Samuel Norton for funding to improve the prison library, the warden refuses, claiming the prison budget is too limited. Determined to change things, Andy begins writing weekly letters to the state government, requesting books and financial support for the library. Even though his letters go unanswered for years, he refuses to give up and keeps sending them every week. Around the same time, chaos suddenly erupts inside Shawshank when Brooks Hatlin holds Haywood at knife point. The inmates eventually calm Brooks down and discover the heartbreaking reason behind his breakdown. After spending 50 years in prison, Brooks has finally been granted parole. Shawshank had become his entire world, and the thought of leaving terrifies him more than staying. Once released, Brooks struggles to adapt to modern life outside prison. The world has changed beyond recognition, and even a simple grocery store job overwhelms him. Feeling completely lost and unable to belong anywhere, Brooks eventually sends a final letter to his friends in prison before taking his own life. His tragic death deeply affects Andy and the others. But soon after, Andy finally receives news he has been waiting years to hear. After years of ignoring Andy Dufresne's letters, the state government finally sends books and supplies to the library at Shawshank. While organizing the donations, Andy discovers an old opera record and decides to play it through the prison loudspeaker. Within moments, beautiful music echoes across Shawshank, and for a brief time every inmate feels mentally free, forgetting the prison walls around them. The guards quickly shut it down, and Warden Samuel punishes Andy by locking him in solitary confinement for 2 weeks. By this point, it is already 1963, and Andy has spent nearly 16 years in prison. Around the same time, Red once again appears before the parole board only to be rejected yet again. Andy, however, refuses to stop pushing for change. After doubling the number of letters he sends every week, the state eventually responds with even larger donations of books and funding. Together, Andy and the inmates completely transform the prison library and rename it in honor of Brooks Hatlin. Within a year, it becomes one of the finest prison libraries in the country. Although Samuel takes public credit for the achievement, the real mastermind is Andy, while the warden secretly expands his corrupt prison labor business behind the scenes. As Warden Samuel expands his prison labor business, he secretly pockets huge profits and accepts bribes from construction companies in exchange for contracts. To hide the illegal money, he uses Andy Dufresne to launder the cash through a fake identity named Randall Stevens. Over the next 2 years, Andy becomes deeply involved in managing the warden's corrupt finances. In 1965, a young inmate named Tommy Williams arrives at Shawshank. At first, many prisoners find Tommy annoying, but his cheerful personality slowly wins everyone over. Although his early conversations with Andy are awkward, Tommy becomes fascinated by the prison library and reveals that he wants to earn his GED diploma while serving his sentence. Andy agrees to tutor him personally, patiently teaching him everything from basic reading skills to exam preparation. When the test day finally arrives, Tommy panics after finishing the exam and becomes convinced he failed miserably. Frustrated, he throws his answer sheet into the trash, but Andy quietly retrieves it and submits it anyway. Later, while speaking with Red, Tommy learns about Andy's murder case. Shocked, he suddenly remembers a dangerous criminal he once shared a prison cell with years earlier, a man who bragged about committing a double murder remarkably similar to Andy's case. The criminal Tommy once knew had openly bragged about his crimes, proudly telling stories about robbing houses and killing people. One day, he confessed to murdering a man and woman during a burglary while they were in bed together, adding that a banker had later been blamed for the crime instead. The moment Tommy shares this story, Andy Dufresne finally has proof that he has been innocent all along. For years, nobody believed Andy's claims that he never killed his wife, but Tommy's story changes everything. Andy immediately takes the information to Warden Samuel, hoping the truth will finally set him free. However, the warden refuses to listen. Andy assumes Samuel is afraid the prison's money laundering operation will be exposed if Andy leaves Shawshank, so he promises to stay silent about the illegal finances after his release. Instead of calming the warden, the mention of the money makes him furious. Samuel immediately throws Andy into solitary confinement for an entire month. Meanwhile, Tommy learns that he actually passed his GED exam thanks to Andy's help. Later that same night, Samuel secretly calls Tommy outside into an empty prison yard and asks whether he would testify in court about Andy's innocence. Believing the warden wants to help, Tommy agrees without hesitation. Seconds later, Captain Byron Hadley shoots Tommy dead from behind on the warden's orders. Even though Tommy Williams had a wife and child waiting for him outside prison, Warden Samuel showed no hesitation in having him killed to protect his money laundering operation. Samuel later visits Andy Dufresne in solitary confinement and coldly claims that Tommy died while trying to escape. Andy immediately understands the truth. The warden then threatens him, warning that if Andy refuses to continue handling the prison's illegal finances, he will remove all guard protection and leave him defenseless among Shawshank's most violent criminals. Samuel also threatens to destroy the prison library and burn every book inside it. After delivering the warning, he orders Andy to remain in solitary for another month. 2 months later, after finally being released from isolation, Andy has a quiet conversation with Red. He admits that even though he never pulled the trigger, he still blames himself for losing his wife long before her death. Andy then shares his dream of one day living peacefully near the Pacific Ocean in Zihuatanejo. Before leaving, he secretly tells Red that if he ever gets out of prison, he should visit a hayfield near Buxton and look beneath an oak tree beside a stone wall. Later that night, the inmates grow suspicious after Haywood reveals that Andy recently asked him for a 6-foot rope. After finishing another day of handling Warden Samuel's illegal banking work, Andy Dufresne deposits the money and returns the financial records to the warden's office. Before sending him back to his cell, Samuel casually orders Andy to polish his shoes, and Andy quietly obeys. That night, however, Red cannot sleep. Andy's strange behavior and request for a rope leave him deeply unsettled. The next morning, when the guards open the cells for head count, Andy never comes out. At first, the guards think he is ignoring them, but after getting no response, one officer unlocks the cell and steps inside. To everyone's shock, Andy has completely vanished. The cell is still locked from the outside and there is no visible way he could have escaped. Panic spreads across Shawshank, and Samuel storms into the cell demanding answers from Red. Furious, the warden starts trashing Andy's belongings until one of Andy's carved chess pieces smashes through the poster hanging on the wall. When Samuel pulls the poster aside, he discovers a massive tunnel hidden behind it. In that moment, the horrifying truth becomes clear. For nearly 20 years, Andy had secretly been digging his escape tunnel with the tiny rock hammer nobody ever suspected. For nearly 20 years, Andy Dufresne had not been carving chess pieces for fun. He had secretly been digging an escape tunnel through the wall of Shawshank. The poster hanging in his cell had hidden the tunnel entrance the entire time, yet nobody ever noticed. After discovering Andy's disappearance, the guards search outside and find his old prison clothes and soap near a sewage drain. It turns out the rope Andy requested was never meant for suicide. He used it to tie his belongings to himself during the escape. That stormy night, with thunder crashing across the sky, gave Andy the perfect cover. After slipping through the tunnel, he used the noise of the thunder to hide the sound of breaking open the prison's sewage pipe. Once the pipe cracked, Andy crawled inside and forced himself through nearly 500 yards of filthy sewage filled with the prison's waste. It was a horrifying journey that would break most people mentally before physically, but Andy survives it all and finally emerges outside the prison walls as a free man. Standing in the rain with his arms raised toward the sky, he experiences true freedom for the first time in decades. The next morning, Andy heads to the bank and reveals the final twist. The mysterious Randall Stevens, who had been receiving the warden's illegal money for years, was actually Andy himself. Using the fake identity he had created years earlier, Andy Dufresne withdraws more than $370,000 from the accounts connected to Warden Samuel Norton's money laundering operation. Back at Shawshank, Norton opens his shoebox the next morning and discovers only Andy's old worn-out prison shoes inside. The polished shoes Andy wore during his escape had actually belonged to the warden himself, but nobody noticed the switch that night. After leaving the bank, Andy mails detailed evidence exposing Norton's corruption, illegal money laundering, and the murder of Tommy Williams to the press. The next morning, the scandal explodes across newspaper headlines, shocking the entire state. Police immediately storm Shawshank and arrest Captain Byron Hadley, along with several corrupt guards. The once terrifying Hadley suddenly looks powerless and terrified himself. Meanwhile, Norton rushes to his office safe and discovers that all the financial records are gone. Inside Andy's Bible, he finally notices the pages carved out perfectly to hide the tiny rock hammer all those years. In that moment, the warden realizes the full brilliance of Andy's long-term escape plan. Seconds later, police officers arrive outside his office door to arrest him for corruption and murder. When police arrive to arrest Warden Samuel Norton for corruption and murder, he realizes there is no escape left for him. Rather than surrendering, Norton takes his own life moments before the officers break into his office. In the end, the cruel warden finally receives the punishment he deserved. After Andy Dufresne escapes from Shawshank, Red struggles deeply with his absence. Sometime later, Red receives a postcard and realizes Andy successfully reached his dream destination in Zihuatanejo. Not long after, Red appears before the parole board once again. For years, he had politely claimed to be rehabilitated, but this time he speaks honestly for the first time. He admits that he regrets the crime he committed as a young man and no longer cares whether anyone believes he has changed or not. Surprisingly, his raw honesty finally convinces the board to grant him parole after nearly 40 years in prison. Once released, Red enters a world that feels completely unfamiliar. He takes the same small apartment and grocery store job once held by Brooks Hatlin. Although he slowly adjusts to life outside prison, Red still feels trapped mentally, struggling with the same loneliness and hopelessness that once drove Brooks to suicide. Before leaving prison, Red had promised Andy Dufresne that he would visit the oak tree near Buxton if he ever got released. One morning, Red finally travels to the exact location Andy described and searches beneath the stone wall beside the tree. There, he discovers a small metal box containing cash and a letter from Andy. In the letter, Andy tells Red that if he has made it this far, he should keep going a little farther because he needs a trusted friend by his side. Following the instructions in the letter, Red violates his parole and journeys all the way to Zihuatanejo. When he finally arrives at the peaceful beach town, he sees Andy once again after years apart. The two old friends reunite beside the Pacific Ocean and begin a completely new chapter of life together. With that emotional ending, The Shawshank Redemption comes to a close. Beyond its prison story, the film delivers a powerful message about hope, patience, friendship, and redemption. It shows how innocent people can suffer unfairly, how prison can break a person mentally, and how determination alone can sometimes help someone rebuild their life from nothing. That unforgettable message is exactly why this movie is still considered one of the greatest films ever made.